Hallo, Frau Kampusch.
Hello, Miss Kampusch. Do come in.
Schön, dass Sie da sind. So, bitte, wenn Sie kommen. Was erwarten Sie sich von diesem
What do you expect from this education program?
Ja, ich freue mich darauf, dass ich
Well,
das
I'm looking forward
nachholen
to
kann,
catching up on what I missed
was
over
mir jetzt
those
die
8
ganzen
years.
8 Jahre entgangen ist.
The access to knowledge.
Wissen.
I
Ich hatte
always
immer das
felt there
Gefühl,
was
ein
a deficit that I had to
unbedingt
compensate
ausgleichen
for,
muss.
no matter what,
Am besten
with the
mit
best
den
means and
Möglichkeiten, die mir
possibilities
damals zur
available
Verfügung
at the
standen.
time.
Man sieht nichts,
Can't see anything.
man hört nur.
You just listen.
Man hört das eigene Blut
You hear
rauschen.
the blood pounding in your
Die
veins.
Enge.
You feel the tightness of the space, the cold.
Man denkt viel.
You think a lot.
Allein schon dieser
This
Schwere,
heavy concrete block alone, it's too heavy for me.
der ist viel zu
Even if
schwer für
something
mich.
had happened to him, I could never have
Also,
escaped from
wenn mir
there.
das passiert wäre, wäre ich niemals dort rausgekommen. Sowas lauert
This is
natürlich,
lurking
es
inside
lauert
of
in
you,
einem.
of course.
Und man denkt
You
sich
wonder
dann,
what will
was
happen.
wird wohl werden? Wird man
Will you
verhungern?
starve?
Was für
What
Möglichkeiten
chances do you
gibt es,
have to
diesen
shorten the
Prozess
ordeal
zu
or to make it less
beschleunigen oder
painful?
zu mildern oder
You
was
search
für
for
Möglichkeiten
theoretical
gäbe es
possibilities.
theoretisch?
You consider
Man denkt sich
where you would
natürlich,
start to
man könnte
dig
dann
in such a
im
situation.
Fall des Falles anfangen zu graben. Es wird
You
einem
feel sick in your stomach.
ich konnte nicht schlafen.
I was unable to sleep.
Ich konnte nicht
I was
schlafen.
awake for days because I didn't want anything happening to me while I was asleep.
Ich wollte nicht, dass
At
mir
least
während
here,
ich schlafe.
I don't want to lose control.
Ich wollte
I need to
wenigstens
be
dann
alert
Kontrolle
in case
verlieren.
something was done to me.
Anwesend sein, wenn mir irgendetwas getan wird, zugefügt wird.
Können Sie sich an irgendetwas
Do you remember
erinnern,
anything you
etwas
learned to do
Gelungenes
and were incredibly
zu
happy
erlernen,
about being able to
Sie
do it?
sich darüber unglaublich gefreut haben, Erfolg zu haben und es zu können?
Ja, ich glaube, das war.
I think this was when I learned to stand on my head. Before that, I was only able to do somersaults forward and backward when I practiced.
Zu schlagen beim Üben. Aber wie ich dann meinen ersten
But when I managed my
kräftigen
first straight headstand,
geschafft
I
habe,
was incredibly happy. It was
das war
a
ein
very great sense of
großes
success.
Erlebnis.
It's the morning of March the 2nd, 1998. Vienna, the 22nd district in the northeast of the city. Natascha Kampusch is 10 years old.
It was a perfectly normal morning. She didn't want to get up, so I said, "Get moving. You've got your tutoring lesson today." Back and forth, and I don't want to wear this and that. You know how girls are. As she was dawdling, I said, "Do you want to ride, or are you going by yourself?" She gets a bit cheeky. "She'll go alone," she says.
Natascha finds it hard to get up. The night before, she returned late from a trip to Hungary with her father.
And then it ended with the glasses. I would never say anything like that again. I said, "Do you have your glasses?" And she gave me a cheeky reply, and I gave her this little smack on the mouth. All of a sudden, I'm a child-beating mom.
On the previous evening, Natascha's parents, who are separated, had a fight. The 10-year-old found herself caught in the middle, like so often in recent years.
Tschüss.
At the time, my mother had a lot of worries. I practically had to drag myself to school. Each step was a struggle. I thought something has to change in my life. Whatever, some sort of solution.
I watched her through the window. Normally she'd turn around and wave, but on that day she didn't. She was angry. And that was it. I've said this to all my children. Never part in anger. You don't know whether you'll meet again. You must imagine I've had to live for 8 years with this line.
I walked on and had a second wind, thinking all will be fine in the end. In the afternoon, I thought, when my mom picks me up at the daycare center, it'll all be fine again. Then we'll celebrate my nephew's birthday, but it never happened. I see him from a distance and I wonder, what business has this man to be here? I had this unconscious feeling, this gut feeling. I knew there was something weird. He spooked me. I had a brief impulse to cross the street. Then I thought, no, that's unnecessary. He won't do me any harm. I didn't want to be run over by a car, so I didn't cross. I didn't want to be ridiculous in my own eyes, so I walked on.
Und dann habe ich mir gedacht, ich will mich auch nicht lächerlich machen von mir selbst. Bin weitergegangen.
I was unable to scream. All I got out was a silent scream.
Es war ein stummer Schrei. Und ja, hat mir dann...
He sped away like mad and kept driving in circles for hours.
Dann stundenlang im Kreis. Ja.
He had taken out the back seat and drove in a way that I kept crashing against the sides, making sure I couldn't hold on to anything and get on my feet.
Damit ich nicht aufhalten kann. Er hat gesagt, ich soll sitzen bleiben.
Told me to sit down and do as I was told. Then I would return to my parents one day. While he was driving, I almost gave up hope for my life. I thought, now it's all over. Thoughts and memories shot through my head, things that wouldn't normally have occurred to me. I had already made my inner peace at that time. I thought, now you won't be around much longer. And when we arrived at the house, he wrapped me into a blanket and simply carried me downstairs from the car. He probably drove up the front driveway. It was dark there. I was simply thrown into the darkness in this blanket.
Dort in diese Dunkelheit, es war da dunkel, einfach hineingeworfen samt der Decke und ja.
Ich denke, es hat sicher eine Rolle gespielt, wie sie sich bewegt, wie sie gelacht hat.
I think it certainly played a role how she moved, how she laughed and talked. Possibly also her family background. In any case, it was not a coincidence that this girl entered his sphere. He'd observed her for a long, long time. He knew a lot about her, and she had become important to him.
What language would you prefer most?
Well, there's no preferred language. I would love to learn them all, but one after the other. English is important for a start. That enables you to communicate with many people around the world.
When was the light first turned on?
I don't know, after 2 or 3 hours, perhaps. It was a barren room with wooden panels. There was nothing in it.
Did you, at that time and in that place, try to draw attention to yourself?
That wasn't possible. I already knew that no one would hear me. He also threatened me that if I were too loud, he would make sure that I would not be noisy. He left that in the dark. You could interpret anything into that. He was a total stranger. He could have done anything to me. Cut my tongue out, tie me up, gag me.
For 8.5 years, Natascha's parents, Ludwig Koch and Brigitte Cerny, live in an uncertainty that makes every minute of the day painful. But they never give up hope.
Liebe Natascha.
Dear Natascha, I'm begging you, please, for anything in the world, please come back.
Well, of course, the thought that I'll never see her again is often in the back of my head.
No matter who you people are, if you have Natascha, please bring her back to us. Let her return.
You can never have a clear head for anything. You can't describe how it is. I look out the window and I think I see the girl coming towards us. Natascha's room has remained unchanged since her disappearance, and it'll stay like that until we know what happened to her.
The love for the child keeps you going. It gives you strength.
Again and again, every day their wounds are torn open. Hope is even placed in the supernatural. Dowsers, diviners, and astrologists think that they can identify the whereabouts of little Natascha. Several people play morbid jokes. Menacing telephone calls almost lead to the parents' breakdown.
A man called and said he has Natascha, and I say, is she alive? He says, yes, it's wonderful. And then I hear heavy breathing.
Natascha Kampusch is being held captive in a hole in the basement of this house in the village of Strasshof, a Vienna suburb just a few miles from where her parents live. The home of a man whom neighbors describe as an inconspicuous and amiable loner, Wolfgang Priklopil.
He said, "You're not even here. You have long been buried somewhere and your mother has murdered you. Now they're all in jail because your father, your mother, and your relatives have plotted to murder you."
The kidnapper closely monitors the media reports about his crime. The private life of Natascha's family is being laid open. The strained relationship between her parents becomes obvious and nourishes nasty speculation. Guilt is placed on the mother because she does not seem to act like a mourning mother.
At home or during solitary hours, I can experience my pain. I don't want to display it before people. I don't know, do the people want to see you with reddened eyes? Do they want you to look miserable? No idea. That's why I was reproached in public, because I never showed my pain.
Before her disappearance, Natascha has been gaining weight, a topic for self-declared experts experts who interpret her photographs as evidence of the unhappy child having been sexually abused by someone in the family. Her mother goes to court.
This was insinuated. I didn't know the man who was said to have done this with me. Allegedly, I had an affair with him. I first saw him in court. Another version was that we had sexually abused Natascha. Today, I can only laugh about that.
It is insinuated that the family produced child pornography with Natascha. Even the expertise of a renowned child psychiatrist cannot silence the rumors.
Natascha was 3 at the time, and her sister went riding. Her riding boots were in the hall, and Natascha slipped into them, and her sister photographed her. That was the situation. The photos were stolen while I went to get coffee and cake for a journalist. He took the pictures while I was out of the room. Then I saw them again in the paper.
Man will dieses Realgeschehen einfach nicht
People
glauben.
simply don't want to believe such a reality, or they want to add something to this reality to make it even more horrifying, ugly, and revolting.
Natascha's father, Ludwig Koch, agrees with a private detective who suspects that Natascha's mother has murdered her daughter and, with an accomplice, disposed of the body in a flooded quarry.
I don't go as far as insinuating that the mother has anything to do with it. All I can say is that the mother is seriously contradicting herself. Nor do I assume that it was a well-planned act. I believe it was done in effect. Mr. Perkacker really has done all he could. Had he failed to do anything, he would have not have made mistakes. As he himself says, he's never been happier than he was about his error, about the fact that Natascha is here again. This was only out of love for the child because we both, she on this side and I on mine, tried to understand the child's fate. This is why I believe that she does not accuse me so much, as I have not accused her, and do not accuse her. I stretched out my hand to Mrs. Cerny, and we are now good friends.
In a 5-square-meter room, Natascha Kampusch matures into a young woman. Her only windows to the outside world are radio and television.
Well, I had access to the radio, almost free access, only when he was away, of course, or rather when the light was on, when I had electricity. I also had a Walkman, but that depended on batteries that he gave me on and off. But he always pressured me with that. I didn't get batteries, as a matter of fact. Television, he first recorded the programs and viewed them before he gave them to me.
Everything Natascha gets to read, to hear, and to see over the years, she absorbs like a sponge. She measures time by the daily news. The voices on the radio and the TV help to satisfy her hunger for information and to shape her language.
I remember the People's Party promising that it would go into opposition. The party chairman, Wolfgang Schüssel, really said, "We will go into opposition. That's written in stone." But then something else happened. Yeah, I remember that. I also remember the introduction of child money and all kinds of political decisions, both right and wrong.
From day one, Ludwig Koch takes the search for his daughter into his own hands. Just 24 hours after her disappearance, he commissions the printing of thousands of missing child posters and spreads them around Greater Vienna. Before
the police even began to act, the posters were all over Vienna.
The search for Natascha Kampusch is the biggest search mission in the country's criminal history. Thousands of leads from the public are followed up. diving teams rake the Danube. Thermal cameras scan the landscape from the air, but the child is gone without a trace. In a parallel action, the family is scrutinized. Today, Natascha's mother accuses the police of having maintained their suspicion for too long.
For too long, they kept looking within the family, for whatever reasons. It's the first thing they have to do until the family is cleared, but a lot of time is lost that way.
Hints were received about Natascha Kampusch's parents, that they were involved in her disappearance. All these hints were followed up. All of them were unfounded.
One day after the kidnapping, the only witness speaks up. A 12-year-old girl saw Natascha being dragged into a white minivan.
The girl with the white van was ignored. Only 14 days later, when they had not found anything, they followed the lead of the white van.
People may have had that impression, but in fact this is not correct. What is correct is that a teacher warned at the time that this girl may have made up the story. Of course, all this was included in the inquiry.
With some delay, the police begin to look for owners of white minivans in Greater Vienna. More than 800 vehicles are checked, including that of Wolfgang Priklopil. The police face Natascha's kidnapper eye to eye.
Priklopil was able to plausibly show to our colleagues that he had used the van for reconstruction work, and when the van was checked, that he had transported construction waste. If they'd only borrowed any kind of dog and taken it to the site, the dog would have known. That's a reproach I have for the police. It would have been necessary to check each of these vans with a tracking dog. For this, the logistics were not available. In Austrian law, a house search order can only be issued against a specific suspect. At that point, no one qualified as a specific suspect. From our present knowledge, we have to say that search dogs would have been unlikely to find the dungeon.
Underneath a strong room trapdoor, weighed down with a concrete block, Natascha Kampusch hopes that the police will find her one day. With varying methods, Wolfgang Priklopil tries to break his victim's will.
Down there, I always had to negotiate with him about how long I could have light. Later, he stopped this.
One of these ordeals was hunger, as you've described.
Yeah, he was extremely stingy concerning food. He was almost like an anorexic, extending his disturbance to others. Something like that. Apart from that, he turned up with an antiquated excuse. If you don't work, you also shouldn't eat.
So Ausrede ist dann gekommen mit, wer nichts arbeitet, braucht auch nichts essen.
This was detrimental, and there were several times when I almost died from hunger, from poor circulation. Then he coddled me up again, which was not enjoyable either.
Wolfgang Priklopil regulates the air supply and temperature from outside, punishing his victim through lack of oxygen and cold.
She was truly in a condition that would cause a most intense feeling of claustrophobia. This can stress people to a point that they will not survive. Chances that Natascha Kampusch will be found alive are very low. In that case, Natascha Kampusch's body must turn up at some point. We believe that she's been hidden somewhere within the borders of Austria.
When I was little, I liked dolls. This was a unique feeling. What surprised me most of all was that all my things were exactly as I had left them. This is very emotional, finding familiar things.
Bewegend, wenn man dann alles wieder findet, die vertrauten Gegenstände und so. Den Mercedes da zum Beispiel.
I also miss the Mercedes very much. My father had to buy it because I absolutely wanted it, and I put it here into the glass cabinet.
Gestellt. Und das Pferd habe ich
I also miss the horse very much. The saddle makes a whinnying sound, by the way.
August the 23rd, 2006, just before 1 p.m. Screaming, a young woman runs through a residential area in Strasshof near Vienna. In desperation, she tries to explain to a neighbor that she is Natascha Kampusch.
I was in good physical condition. Although I had eaten very little that day, I no longer had all these bruises and injuries, and I felt strong enough to run away. Also, emotionally, he had always said that he would kill himself and everyone involved, and I did not know how fast he was able to run, whether he would catch me or whatever tactics he would use.
The telecom engineer flees in his red BMW. Wolfgang Priklopil has lost control over his victim. While Natascha Kampusch washes his car, Priklopil takes a phone call and leaves her unobserved for a brief moment. She grabs the opportunity. At 8:59 p.m. on August the 23rd, 2006, Wolfgang Priklopil executes himself. He throws himself in front of a train on the Vienna Municipal Railway.
Major criminals do not leave anything to chance. They plan everything in advance, including the end, the worst case, so to speak. What did play a role, though, is that this came as a surprise, that he suddenly faced the void. He'd lost the person he cared for most, the purpose of his life. He knew, now I am in the same position as my victim. I will probably be locked up for many years. In this situation, against the background of a prepared plan, the element of panic may have played a role. This is indicated by the way he took his life. The specifics of that were not premeditated. He simply sought the easiest way out.
Sometimes he had a very bad conscience, but he could no longer turn things around. He was probably appalled by what he had caused, and in a certain way, I also was a moral authority to him. I got him to think about what he had done to me and my family.
Was sagen Sie dazu, dass die Tochter möglicherweise...
Das war praktisch ein Wirrwarr von Freude und Angst.
It was a profusion of joy and fear. Will I see my child immediately? And then again the fear. What will I do when I get disappointed?
I immediately started to cry. My grandchildren asked what's wrong, and I said, Natascha is back. Then I was unable to speak.
It was the greatest feeling of joy in my life. She said, Dad, I love you.
She disappeared when she was 10. Now I have a grown-up woman before me. So I thought, what will I do now? What's to be done? Spontaneously, we hugged.
While the parents embrace their daughter for the first time in 8 years, the police begin a manhunt for Wolfgang Priklopil. Shocked, he drives aimlessly around Vienna. His odyssey ends at a shopping centre from where he calls his business partner. They meet, and he tells his partner that he's on the run from the police because of drunk driving. His partner suggests he should surrender himself to the police and takes him to a train station. Meanwhile, Natascha Kampusch describes to the police the way to his house and to her dungeon from where Wolfgang Priklopil had her parents in his sights.
I now learn that he observed me. For instance, Natascha knew that I had a new car. He knew that her sister smoked. Looking back, I think it's incredible that on top of everything, I was being stalked. I think he did it to pressure her, telling her he would kill the family if she ran away. So he always told her, "Your mom and dad are doing this and that." I guess he also stalked her father.
Immediately after Natascha Kampusch's escape, the police begin the crime site investigation routine at the kidnapper's house. Horrified, the world stares at the images of the young woman's dungeon. For her own safety, Natascha Kampusch is taken to the Vienna General Hospital.
Here at our clinic, she was in contact with younger children, older children, and adolescents, with nurses, psychologists, doctors, social workers, an entire team, as is typical for a clinic.
I remember how I learned to read with this booklet. It's a book of poems, and I always read them aloud. Tina the bee lived in a hollow tree. Of other bees there were lots, but Tina knew the best honey gathering spots. So excited was Tina that she did not watch where she was flying. She almost got caught in a nearly invisible spider's web. She escaped by the skin of her teeth.
There's Natascha Kampusch, a strong woman with a will to survive, and there's the victim that did not quite fit into the public's imagination. She lives between these two poles of personal strength and the weak position of the victim.
Wir sehen derzeit nicht die Teile.
At present, we don't see the parts that are really difficult for her to manage, things that make her sick and confront her with a real challenge in life.
Die für sie derzeit eine wirkliche Lebensaufgabe darstellen.
Also jetzt ohne Männer zu beleidigen, denke ich mir doch, dass Frauen ein Stück
Now, without wanting to offend men, I think that women have and can develop very different vibes with other women. My position was to offer myself as a more mature woman, not as a substitute mom, but as a haven, giving shelter and orientation, if necessary.
Eine Art Ruhepol, an dem man sich ein bisschen anlehnen, vielleicht auch ein bisschen orientieren kann, wenn es notwendig ist.
The eyes of the world are focused on Austria and the unique fate of 18-year-old Natascha Kampusch. Camera teams from across the world beleaguer police authorities, psychologists, and Natascha's family, trying to shed light on the incomprehensible. The pressure rises to the point where Natascha makes an appeal to the media 5 days after her escape. She asks for more time until she's capable of telling her own story. In her letter, she reveals the first details of her captivity.
Symbolically speaking, he carried me on his hands and trod on me with his feet.
On the one hand, I was terribly important to him. On the other, he treated me like dirt. I think that at times he acted in a way that would have been admirable for a 3-year-old. But of course, it's not the same whether a 3-year-old stomps on you and angrily screams at you and destroys everything, or whether it's a 6-foot man who is accustomed to physical labor and is really powerful.
Unnoticed by his mother, friends, and neighbors, Wolfgang Priklopil leads a double life for 8 years. He plans everything carefully and leaves nothing to accident. When he shops for Natascha, he never does it around the neighborhood. People describe him as polite, prudent, correct, and industrious. He manages to deceive everyone. He checks the rubbish to make sure that his victim cannot send messages to the outside world. The rubbish is always disposed of far away from his home. But Wolfgang Bricklepil was not able to judge his victim's health. At some point, she had to learn to live with pain.
I was never able to tell him when I had a toothache. I didn't want to worry him because he was incapable of handling difficult situations. It may have resulted in getting no food. I fought for things. I had to fight for many things.
Strategically, she is almost a genius. Acting strategically means fully unfolding one of our best cerebral abilities. It involves anticipation, the ability to premeditate purpose and plan. In other words, planning ahead is strategy. She developed this ability to perfection.
Perfekt. Auf der einen Seite hat ihm das natürlich gefallen, dass hier sozusagen etwas Rechtes nach seinen
On the one hand, he was, of course, pleased that something proper was growing in compliance with his own vision. On the other, it also must have represented a threat, because I imagine the relationship between the two must have been. In the beginning, Natascha Kampusch being the victim, helplessly at his mercy, and he the strong, all-powerful figure who made all the decisions. In the course of time, this relationship became balanced, if not even reversed. How could you fight for things?
By being insisting, by being tenacious.
Haben Sie es durch diese Beharrlichkeit auch geschafft,
Did this make you stronger than him?
sogar stärker waren als er?
In the end, yes, because as the proverb goes, those who are patient will harvest, or he who laughs last laughs best.
Zu welchen Tätigkeiten hat Herr
When he took you into the house, what did you have to do?
One part was simple household chores like cooking, and I renovated almost the entire house for him. During breaks, if there were any, I had to pour him drinks and prepare food, which he then amiably also allowed me to eat.
Die ich dann freundlicherweise auch zu mir nehmen durfte.
So ein Kakao, den essen alle gern. Und die Oma, die kommt auch. Da brauchen wir mal die Becher. Schau her, da hast du mal ein Mehl. Da gib einen Becher voll mit Mehl.
4 months after her escape, Natascha Kampusch spends much time with her family.
Noch eine.
Ach so, ein drittes.
The joy of being reunited was soon overshadowed by new speculation and allegations. The public did not want to believe their version of the kidnapping. Again, people try to place guilt on the mother. If she was not a murderess, at least she must have been an accomplice in the kidnapping with Wolfgang Bricklepil.
Ja, schau, da hast du Schokolade. Du.
Allegedly, you knew Mr. Bricklepil. What's it like to be confronted with such an allegation?
Ja, es ist schrecklich, aber
It's terrible, but since I was also charged with murdering her before she reappeared, I thought, well, that's just another version. And that was that.
Dass ich sie umgebracht habe, habe ich das eigentlich jetzt, man denkt, okay, das ist eine neue Version und das war's dann. Natürlich, man macht
Of course, you mull it over. You're hurt.
Verletzt, aber
Yes.
ja.
Wir sind von Kamerateams verfolgt worden.
We were hounded by camera teams. I fled with her to my office and then needed a colleague's support in order to handle this media frenzy.
Medienansturm zurechtkommen.
That over there, that's what I gave you once for Mother's Day. I remember when you said you didn't want it loose because it looks so cute with the pigtails.
Die großen grünen
Yeah, exactly. Those are your eyes, exactly your eye color.
I think this is when we'll be really happy, when we'll be literally sitting in a boat, just us, no one else around.
Und von niemandem etwas sehen und hören und nur wir sind.
2 weeks after Natasha Kampusch's escape, she and her team of counsellors decide to go public. The intention is to stop the paparazzi from trying to sell the victim's first photograph for a fortune and making Natasha a beleaguered person. The strategy succeeds, but again, items that were not mentioned in the first TV interview are used against her. A joint skiing excursion with Wolfgang Pricklepil makes the public doubt Natasha's version of her fate.
It was also very painful to see these people having normal lives, that they didn't have a clue. Inside, I always screamed, "Look at me! Why doesn't anyone help me?" I virtually shouted at them, but no one ever noticed. I could not really talk. It was very awful, and in the beginning I also was frightened of these people. I was no longer used to people.
Es war sehr arg und am Anfang haben mich diese Menschen noch irgendwie verschreckt. Ich war ja diese Menschen nicht mehr gewöhnt.
The fact that in these 8 years they also made joint excursions does not contradict the image of the pain she suffered.
Überhaupt kein Widerspruch zum Bild der erlittenen Qualen. Wir dürfen uns nicht vorstellen, dass es
We must not imagine that it was either one or the other, that a person who makes a ski excursion could not have suffered terrible pain 5 hours previously. That's part of the life of a traumatized person.
Es ist ein Teil des Lebens traumatisierter Menschen.
I also saw that when I escaped. I ran and drew attention to me, screaming, "Help!" They just walked by, shrugging their shoulders. But I knew that beforehand and expected it. This was also one reason why I didn't flee earlier. It was an aspect to consider. Would anyone help me, or will people turn you away?
Hilft mir wirklich jemand oder wird man einfach weggewiesen?
Lawyers have to make sure that Natascha Kampusch's life does not become a public domain. An internet search for Natascha Kampusch already produces over 1 million results. New media reports appear on a daily basis and have to be checked for accuracy. Court action has been taken against the British daily, The Times, because it has printed excerpts from an unauthorized book.
It wasn't just about the surroundings of the house. It was about my past and neighborhood. There were people who did not know me from earlier days, yet they made their comments.
We kept expanding the team. Up to 5 lawyers worked on Natascha Kampusch's case. Then there are waves when someone publishes a report or this unauthorized book, when we get more work.
Man tut ihr wahrscheinlich etwas Gutes, wenn man sie
It's probably best for her if she is left in peace, if she's allowed to prepare for her life, if she can get some compensation for all the suffering. Being a star can never compensate for this. She can only be a starlet and will be dropped by the media as soon as they lose interest.
Wenn die Medien kein Interesse mehr daran haben.
For instance, there is a list of media stars, politicians, positive and negative things. On that list, Ms. Kampusch is number 2 after the Austrian president. Can you believe it? She has to deal with that and also with the fact that at some point she will no longer be in the limelight. Getting over that is a challenge.
An ihr besteht. Und das muss man mal aushalten.
Natascha's family try their best to lead normal lives. All of them have to learn to deal with the young woman's fate and with the pain suffered. Natascha Kampusch wants to live alone, but the family is there as her safety network. The family feels that they have been passed over by therapists and legal as well as media advisors. Too often, they say, they have been isolated from their child and excluded from decisions.
It's rather turbulent, and we have our troubles. It's very turbulent because of the media, the lawyers, the counselors, well, generally. It's ongoing. You can't spend a pleasant, quiet day with Natascha. I remember when we were invited in from Burgenland, all of us. These were the only 2.5 days when I felt that it was a little more tranquil. But that was over in a moment.
Natascha has experienced extreme things. Isn't it difficult for a mother to deal with that?
I know a little, whatever she has told me, and it's awful. I really have to pull myself together to be able to deal with her in the right manner.
Well, meeting up again is not difficult. What's difficult are people's idiosyncrasies, individual weaknesses. You have to deal with each weakness. You can show your own various weaknesses to various family members.
Die man selbst hat zeigen. Genau.
Now someone here smokes real cigarettes.
For the child's sake, I'm trying to give up smoking.
I'm terribly proud of you. From 80 a day to how many now?
10 to 15.
That's really a lot better.
I hope I'll succeed. You've just come out of an extreme situation. This makes it difficult for many people who are not sure how to act towards you.
Yeah, yesterday I was out and people were afraid to talk to me, those sitting at my table. They all laughed and talked and made jokes, but they did not laugh and joke with me. Other people near us kept staring at me. People don't get the idea that I also need company and the interest of others, that I also need someone to laugh and joke with me. That was lacking, and it's often like that. Most people are reserved, and I'm excluded. This teddy was given to me by my grandma when I was 9 or so, and what I found so delightful about this animal is that it has little babies. I find mothers terribly important. Being a mother is great.
Natascha Kampusch has yet to come to terms with her childhood memories and with the horror of her captivity. This month, she finally goes back to school. After completing primary school, she wants to go on to high school, pass A-levels, and then go to university.
Will Miss Kampusch ever be able to get Mr. Pricklepel out of her head?
Einen Menschen,
You cannot erase the memory of a person who accompanied you for 8 years of your life.
seine Erinnerung nicht streichen. Das, was die Frau Kampusch wahrscheinlich
What Miss Kampusch will probably learn in her therapy is to deal with memories in such a way that they are not permanently disturbing.
belastende, störende und verletzende.
But you cannot get rid of these memories.
Aber löschen kann man diese Erinnerungen nicht.
The people dealing with this on a short-term basis, policemen, coroners, the public, for them it will soon pass. For them it's just another case, an anonymous story. But I, and also his mother, have to struggle with it, and maybe that'll never end.